A plot twist can either make or break a movie. Pull it off and the story is all the better for it, but get it wrong and audiences can swear the film off forevermore. The art of a great plot twist can't ever be underestimated, and every so often a genuinely brilliant twist will somehow find itself landing in an otherwise dud movie, near enough redeeming it in the process. With major spoilers ahead, you're watching Whatculture, and here are awesome plot twists that totally save terrible movies. Esther is dead. Orphan first kill. For the most part, this prequel to 2009's wonderfully unhinged horror film Orphan provides a pretty by-the-numbers origin story for psychopathic serial killer Lena Klammer, played by Isabel Fuhrman. Also completely blindsides viewers with a wildly unexpected mid-film twist. First Kill shows Lena, a 31-year-old woman with a growth-stunting pituitary disorder, escaping from an Estonian psych ward and then posing as a missing American girl called Esther. This leads to her being quote-unquote reunited with her mother, Tricia, father, Alan, and brother, Gunnar. And while it's fair to assume that the rest of the movie will simply play out similarly to the first, with Esther turning psycho on her new family, things are a little more complicated than that. Once a detective discovers who Esther really is, she's suddenly saved by Tricia, who shoots him dead. Tricia then reveals that she knew Lena was an imposter the entire time because the real Esther was killed 4 years earlier during an argument with Gunnar. To protect her son, Tricia covered up Esther's death while keeping her husband totally unaware. Basically, this seemingly totally normal mother is actually a femme fatale in her own right, and quite the savage match for Esther.
Brahms is living in the walls of the house, The Boy. 2016 horror film The Boy centers around a woman who is hired by a wealthy elderly couple to be a nanny for their boy Brahms, a porcelain doll that serves as a surrogate for their son of the same name who perished in a house fire 20 years earlier. Though audiences naturally went in expecting an entertainingly trashy killer doll movie in the vein of Child's Play, The Boy is actually a frustratingly tepid effort where the doll only appears to move around off-screen. But the end of the movie delivers a terrifically subversive plot twist that flips the entire scenario on its head by revealing that Brahms is actually very much alive, having survived the fire and is now living inside the walls of his family's lush mansion. He's been sneaking around and moving the doll, giving the impression that it is possessed. While the majority of the movie was a disappointingly dull affair, this bonkers expectation-defying twist brought it surging back to life for a finale in which the nanny has to fend off the real adult Brahms. Now, a less thrilling twist came at the start of the sequel though, which bafflingly retconned this ending and reverted to the idea that the porcelain doll was actually possessed after all, while the flesh and blood Brahms was nowhere to be seen.
Jill's husband is actually Duncan When a Stranger Calls. 1979's When a Stranger Calls features one of the most terrifying openings in horror movie history, playing on the legend of the babysitter and the man upstairs in what is honestly a masterstroke of suspense from director Fred Walton. The film actually remade and expanded upon the director's 1977 short film, The Sitter. Sadly, the rest of the material is found extremely wanting, as the story devolves into a maudlin array of sequences of a private detective tracking down the recently escaped perpetrator of the opening crime. That said, When a Stranger Calls does come full circle enough to nearly justify the extended story, featuring an end-act twist that rivals the opening in terms of creepy abruptness. Having escaped his pursuers, killer Kurt Duncan tracks down Jill, played by Carol Kane, the babysitter he originally stalked and harassed all those years ago. We're initially led to believe that Duncan is targeting Jill's kids, but the police arrive and find nothing suspicious. Meanwhile, the private investigator we've been following, John Clifford, tries desperately to reach Jill, only to discover that the phone lines have been cut. Then, at night, while everyone is asleep, Jill hears Duncan's voice from within her own bedroom. The closet door is jarred slightly open, leading us to believe that Duncan is hiding in there. But psych, he's actually dressed as Jill's husband and he's been lying in bed with her this entire time. It's a real zinger of a twist, with Clifford managing to make it into the room to kill Duncan before he can do any harm. Just a shame that the middle third had to be so bad.
Evan kills himself in the womb. The Butterfly Effect Director's Cut. The Butterfly Effect is certainly an interesting movie, but a fundamentally incoherent one, in which Evan discovers that he can travel back in time to inhabit the body of his younger self while hoping that he can change his troubled future for the better. Despite its ambitious concept, the movie is full of timey-wimey plot holes and inconsistencies which ruin most of the fun. It's an over-sentimental mess of a movie, but with some intriguing ideas, though achieves an inspired transcendence in its categorically insane original ending, which was restored for the film's director's cut on home video. In this ending, Evan realizes that his time-hopping shenanigans have ruined the lives of basically everybody he cares about, and so travels back to when he was a baby in the womb, where he strangles himself with his own umbilical cord. By dying, Evan negates his negative impact on the timeline and ensures those around him have more favorable and hopeful futures.
Caroline gets trapped in Violet's body, the skeleton key. The film follows hospice nurse Caroline Ellis, played by Kate Hudson, who takes a job at an isolated plantation house in Louisiana to help Violet Devereaux, Gina Rowlands, care for her ailing husband Benjamin, played by John Hurt. Plenty of low-energy, spooky shenanigans ensue, with the audience being led to believe that Violet is plotting to sacrifice Ben and Caroline to grant herself eternal life. Quite, though. It turns out that Violet and Ben are actually former slaves who have been using a ritual to swap bodies with younger folks they invite into their home. The reason for Ben's condition is that Violet recently body swapped him with the family's young lawyer Luke, played by Peter Skarsgård, who is naturally terrified at having been swapped into an elderly man's body. In the end, Violet also swaps her own body with Caroline and feeds her a potion-inducing stroke-like paralysis, leaving her unable to fight back or alert anyone to what's happened. EMS then show up to take Caroline, who is in Violet's body, and Luke, in Ben's body, away, while Violet and Ben, now in the bodies of Caroline and Luke, pretend that they inherited the house from them, allowing them to keep living there. It's one hell of a savage ending in a movie that is otherwise just completely forgettable.
Dr. Gordon is Jigsaw's accomplice. Saw the final chapter. Now, there's a strong argument to be made that the 7th Saw movie, ill-advisedly dubbed The Final Chapter, is the worst of the entire 9-movie series. By this point in the franchise, the Saw formula felt pretty played out. The traps had lost their grimly imaginative sheen, the storytelling had reached a melodramatic critical mess, and even the twists weren't as daftly impactful as they once were. But The Final Chapter was at least smart enough to pull the trigger on a long-held fan theory that many had lost hope of ever coming true, that one of Jigsaw's victims from the original movie, Dr. Lawrence Gordon, would be revealed to be one of his accomplices. Gordon famously went missing at the end of the first film after sawing off his own foot and escaping Jigsaw's grotty bathroom, with fans then speculating about his fate ever since. The Final Chapter brought Gordon back into the fold by having him appear at a Jigsaw survivors support group, and at the film's end, we learned that he's actually been nursed back to health by Jigsaw, and has also been given a mission. And what is that mission? And that is to take down the new Jigsaw, Detective Hoffman, in the event that anything happened to Jigsaw's ex-wife Jill. After Jill was killed by Hoffman, Gordon sprang into action. And so the movie ends with Gordon kidnapping Hoffman and locking him away in Jigsaw's bathroom, leaving him to die with the satisfyingly smug one-liner, "Game over."
It's all a simulation, but the curse is real. Ghosts of War. It was all a dream. Twists are pretty played out these days, and certainly sound lame on paper. Within the context of a war film, it's actually a pretty interesting idea, especially when it comes so out of left field. Ghosts of War takes place in France in World War II, where a squad of 5 American soldiers are tasked with guarding a chateau, which they soon come to believe is haunted by a malevolent supernatural presence. During a ghostly attack later on, protagonist Chris, played by Brenton Thwaites, wakes up in a brightly lit room with a group of doctors watching him. Oh, this isn't Assassin's Creed. As it turns out, he and the other soldiers have been hooked up to a simulation resembling World War II in an attempt to help them recover from PTSD. Chris and his squad mates are modern American soldiers who were critically wounded while fighting in Afghanistan. But there's more. The surviving member of the family the soldiers failed to protect in Afghanistan cursed them moments before detonating the suicide vest which injured them all. And the curse turns out to be very real. Turns out the curse itself has caused the simulation to be haunted by the ghosts of the fallen family members. And so though Chris vows to re-enter the simulation in order to make peace with them. However, just as he plans to do that, the machine running the simulation wipes his memory, forcing him to relive the whole scenario with no knowledge of these shocking revelations.
Remy is actually in a coma. Repo Man. Now, sci-fi action flick Repo Man is a mostly forgettable feature film, but at least offers up one of the few worthwhile variations on a massively overused type of plot twist. You see, Remy and partner Jake are two of the titular Repo Men, whose work involves reclaiming replacement organs from clients who default on their payments, in turn killing them. It's a neat premise that nevertheless is filtered through the prism of a generic, largely unimaginative sci-fi flick that, save for its wild twist ending, is mostly forgotten. Yet the film does strike gold late in the day when Remy has an expected change of heart and seemingly conquers the organ debt trade that he was himself a part of, ending up on a tropical beach as a reward for his efforts. But the big twist reveals that when Remy and Jake got into a fight earlier on in the movie and Remy was knocked unconscious, he received traumatic brain damage and is now in a coma. Remy's beach getaway is actually a dream world that his brain was hooked up to by a guilt-ridden Jake, allowing him to live out his life in seemingly able-minded bliss inside this virtual construct.
The plane is another escape room. Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Escape Room Tournament of Champions is, just like its predecessor, a disappointingly tame PG-13 horror flick, further weakened by atrociously dumb writing. But its wild twist ending finally sees the film settling into the more self-aware, freewheeling tone it should have had all along. While the reveal itself is actually quite predictable, it proves that this need not be a bad thing when it's actually just really fun. At the film's end, Zoe, played by Taylor Russell, Ben, Logan Miller, and Amanda, played by Daredevil's Deborah Ann Wall, finally managed to escape Minos' deadly facility and notify the police about their deadly escape rooms, bringing Minos' activities into the public eye. A victory for the trio, it seems, then, except when Zoe decides to get over a fear of flying and boards are playing with Ben. It's soon enough revealed to be just another escape room, as we saw Minos testing out at the end of the first movie. Sure, it felt like the most logical of cliffhanger endings, but it was also so delightfully ridiculous that it perhaps made even non-fans mildly intrigued to see where a third film took it.
The curse goes viral. Truth or Dare. Now, Truth or Dare is a deeply awful horror film in which a supernaturally cursed version of a game causes its participants to end up dead one way or another. The movie's script is dumb as a brick, full of nonsensical plotting without much in the way of internal logic, hilariously wooden dialogue, poor performances, and unintentionally slapstick-worthy death scenes. But the screenplay gets at least one thing right, and that is its ending. While we as an audience are conditioned to expect that the protagonist Olivia will find a way to prevail over the demonic game, she ultimately realizes the only way to survive is to actually prolong it, and that means to invite more people to join. And so Truth or Dare climaxes with a twist where she uploads a video to YouTube inviting viewers to play, effectively making the game go viral and buying her and her friend a ton of time before the curse returns to them. For a horror movie hero to do something so selfish and decidedly unheroic in the final stretch was a genuine surprise, especially as earlier on in the film, Olivia made a comment about how she'd choose to save humanity over herself in a disaster scenario, but alas, the truth came out in the end.
Kirsty traded her husband to Pinhead, Hellraiser, Hellseeker. The sixth Hellraiser film admittedly has few fans, with even the return of franchise heroine Kirsty Cotton, Ashley Lawrence, giving it much juice. Hellseeker does manage to slightly compensate for its risible filmmaking and scant runtime afforded to Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley, with its climactic twist. It's eventually revealed that philandering protagonist Trevor, Dean Winters, has been scheming to kill his wife Kirsty by making her open the Lament configuration puzzle box once again. When Kirsty opened it, she instead made a deal with Pinhead, agreeing to trade her husband and 4 additional souls to him in exchange for her own freedom. The 4 other souls end up being 3 of Trevor's extramarital partners and a friend who was helping him plot Kirsty's murder, each of whom Kirsty murders while framing Trevor as the killer. thriller. Trevor then realizes that the car crash he was involved in at the start of the movie was caused by Kirsty shooting him in the head, and he's been residing in a hellish limbo ever since. Man, talk about tearing your soul apart.
Hartley is a secret con man, Red Notice. Red Notice was an attempt by Netflix to deliver their own blockbuster-sized movie to home audiences, complete with loony action sequences and an all-star cast. It is ultimately, though, pure white noise of a movie, something to casually eye up while doing the household chores and which might generate the occasional laugh, but is a mostly soulless action-adventure film that feels like it was generated by a bloody algorithm. The mind-numbingly generic plot does at least make some entertainingly absurd twists at the end, though, when it's revealed that the straight-laced FBI agent John Hartley, played by Dwayne Johnson, was actually in on the focal bejeweled egg heist all along. More to the point, Hartley was in league with master thief the Bishop, with the pair being both romantic and professional partners who teamed up to pull off the job. It doesn't make a ton of sense if you break the movie down and examine every fragment of what passes for a story here, but the commitment to such a silly gotcha moment is to be commended, and in turn ensures that the already announced sequel will have a different dynamic between its three central characters.
Ashley and Nick were the masterminds. Reindeer Games. For those who haven't seen Reindeer Games, the film follows ex-convict Rudy Duncan, played by Ben Affleck, who ends up forced to help a band of thieves rob a casino upon fear of death, while posing as his former prison mate Nick Cassidy, who was killed in jail. But, it's eventually revealed that Nick didn't actually die in prison, and instead faked his own death and has been in league with Rudy's love interest Ashley, Charlize Theron, whose real name is Millie, to set Rudy up. Before they can kill him though, Rudy manages to turn the tables and off them both. It's an amusingly ridiculous twist coming at the end of an otherwise totally ho-hum flick.
The best friend was a ghost the entire time, Safe Haven. Up until its final 2 minutes, Safe Haven is exactly what everybody expected from your typical Nicholas Sparks adaptation, a hokey, cornball romantic melodrama filled with questionable acting and embarrassingly chintzy dialogue. You see, the bulk of the film is focused on a woman called Erin, who flees her abusive past and soon gets smitten with a charming local widower called Alex. Throughout the film, Erin hangs out with her neighbor Joe, but in the brilliantly unhinged final 2 minutes, it's revealed that Joe was actually a ghost the entire time. More to the point, Joe is actually Carly, Alex's dead wife, who has been watching over them and encouraging their relationship throughout the story. It's a thrilling ending to an otherwise cheesy romantic drama, and given how drastically the reveal changes the entire context of the story, it makes a second viewing seem genuinely worthwhile.
Tom is actually guilty. High crimes. Of Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman's surprisingly large number of collaborations over the years, perhaps the silliest is High Crimes. Judd stars as Claire Kubik, whose husband Tom is arrested by the FBI for apparently taking part in a military op in El Salvador, which resulted in the deaths of 9 unarmed civilians. Tom claims he was there, but that he didn't take part in the killings. And from early on, audiences are basically primed to expect an aggressively conventional conspiracy thriller in which Tom is being framed by another party. It all seems incredibly cut and dried. That is, until the genuinely surprising penny drops, when Tom tells his wife that he did indeed commit the murders, and even had witnesses killed in an attempt to cover it up. Sure enough, it leads to another typical finale where Tom attempts to kill Claire, resulting in her killing him, but for a few minutes, things actually got exciting and interesting.
Donnie was the real criminal mastermind, Den of Thieves. Den of Thieves is a superficially passable heist film, albeit one rendered rather tedious and exhausting due to its brutal 140-minute runtime, ensuring that a potentially breezy crime thriller is elongated out with self-important subplots and masses of unearned character development drama. Yet this film does have a frankly delicious ace up its sleeve which ties together the entire movie in a satisfyingly ridiculous way, and that's when we learn that low-key getaway driver Donnie isn't quite the hapless everyman that we've been led to believe. The movie ends with a giddy homage to The Usual Suspects as Detective Nick discovers that Donnie was actually the heist's criminal mastermind all along. Donnie worked his unassuming job as a bartender at a bar frequented by Federal Reserve employees to grift information about the reserve's vaults, allowing him to plan the heist and get away with the money undetected. And as a cherry on top, the final scene shows Donnie now working at a pub in London situated next to a diamond exchange.
Aces is Spirazza's son, and Mesner pulls the plug. Smokin' Aces. Aces. Smokin' Aces is the cinematic equivalent of spending 109 minutes with someone buzzing obnoxiously off illicit substances while you're sat in the corner, sober as a judge. It's got a great cast and has boundless energy, but is ultimately just a bit annoying. The film is centered around Vegas musician buddy Aces Israel, played by Jeremy Piven, who has become a mafia informant for the FBI, prompting mob boss Primo Spirazza, Joseph Ruskin, to place a $1 million bounty anyone who can kill him and bring him his heart. Lots of loud, grating mayhem ensues over the next 90 minutes, before the truth is revealed to FBI agent Mesner, played by Ryan Reynolds. In fact, Israel is Spirazza's illegitimate son, and the FBI wishes for an ailing Spirazza to receive his son's heart so they can continue to drill him for information. Oh, and Spirazza himself is also a former undercover FBI agent who decided to become Spirazza for real after the FBI tried to have him assassinated for getting too deep into his cover. What? The final twist then sees Mesner, infuriated at seeing his fellow agents die for a mob boss, decide to lock himself in the operating room and pull the plug on both Israel and Spirazza's life support, killing them while FBI head honcho Locke, Andy Garcia, tries to break in. This is like some Twilight Zone Outer Limits stuff right here.
Gabriel is Madison's parasitic twin, Malignant, a seemingly generic supernatural horror film, albeit one harboring a most brilliantly unhinged plot twist. The bulk of the movie revolves around Madison, a woman who believes that she's being stalked by Gabriel, her childhood imaginary friend, who is inexplicably manifesting in the real world as a cloaked serial killer. But Malignant transforms into something else entirely with its absolutely bizarre third act reveal, and that is that Gabriel is actually Madison's parasitic twin. While most of Gabriel was surgically removed in Madison's youth, a vestigial part remains connected to her brain, and so the cloaked mysterious figure we've seen doing all of the killings throughout the film is actually Madison as possessed by Gabriel, with his jerky body movements a result of Gabriel operating Madison's body backwards. Were it not for this big reveal, Malignant would have been forgotten within a week, but now it is destined to live on as a ridiculous cult classic for years and perhaps even decades.
Everyone's still alive, and Hardy isn't a DEA agent. Basic revolves around DEA agent Tom Hardy, played by John Travolta, who investigates the mystery of a botched military training exercise at an army base in Panama, which has left numerous soldiers either dead or missing. Hardy probes the survivors for their accounts of what happened. Hardy isn't a DEA agent, but the colonel of a covert Black Ops anti-drug unit called Section 8. Moreover, he's been in league with the dead and missing men who are actually alive, including unit leader Sergeant West, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Their goal all along? To shut down cocaine trafficking in the base, eliminate the soldiers responsible, and safely exfiltrate West by faking his death.
The moon was built by ancient humans. Moonfall. There's a strong argument to be made that Moonfall is the worst major release of 2022, a shambolically stupid sci-fi disaster film from the man who actually popularized the genre to modern audiences, Roland Emmerich. The film chronicles humanity's existence being threatened by the moon itself, which appears to be falling out of orbit and heading towards Earth. The trailers ended up spoiling what appeared to be the movie's big twist, that an alien entity is actually residing on the moon and is responsible for its destabilized gravity. However, the director actually has an altogether nuttier rug pull in store for audiences, as the third act reveals that the moon was actually a megastructure created billions of years ago by humanity's ancestors, a technologically advanced race far beyond present-day humans. The moon was built to serve as an ark for their kind after an AI they created went rogue and attempted to wipe them out, that AI being the extraterrestrial entity on the moon throughout the film. As if that isn't insane enough, Moonfall then climaxes with eccentric conspiracy theorist Casey Houseman sacrificing himself to destroy the rogue AI, after which it's been revealed that his consciousness has been replicated by the moon's benign AI operating system, allowing him to live on.